Have you ever thought about what it would take to ground thousands of airplanes all at once? I'm not talking about a cyber attack or some big mechanical failure. I'm talking about an invisible force of nature. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about today. The incredible true story of a mysterious tech glitch that brought a massive chunk of global air travel to a screeching halt.
Seriously, think about that number. 6,000 commercial jets. It sounds like something out of a disaster movie, right? But it really happened. So how in the world does a single invisible force do that? We're going to break it all down step by terrifying step.
So this whole thing didn't start with some big global panic. Nope. It started with one single, frightening moment high above the clouds. This was the very first clue that something was seriously wrong.
All right, so picture this. You're on a flight in late October 2025. Everything's totally normal, you're cruising along, maybe the drink service is coming around, and then out of absolutely nowhere, the plane just lurches forward and starts to dive. For everyone on JetBlue 1230, a routine flight had just turned into an absolute nightmare. So what we know is this: the plane, an Airbus A320, just dropped. No command from the pilots whatsoever. They had to fight for control, and thankfully they managed to make an emergency landing in Tampa. But several passengers were injured in the chaos. And here's the detail that kicked off a global investigation. The plane did it all on its own.
And that right there is the million-dollar question for investigators, isn't it? I mean, how does one of the most advanced flying machines ever created just decide to take a nosedive? This wasn't pilot error. It wasn't your typical engine failure. The answer was something much, much stranger.
The investigation eventually led them to a culprit that was, and this is wild, both incredibly powerful and almost totally invisible. It was like a ghostly finger reaching out from space to mess with the plane's brain.
Okay, so to get what happened, we need to talk about a little thing called the ELAC. That stands for Elevator Aileron Computer. Just think of it as one of the key brains on the plane that controls its pitch, the up and down movement of the nose. It is absolutely essential for keeping the plane flying straight and level.
So yeah, investigators knew pretty quickly that the ELAC had messed up. But why? It wasn't a bad wire, it wasn't a fried chip inside the computer itself. The thing that actually triggered the failure was our very own sun, all the way back 93 million miles away.
It was this insane chain reaction. Check this out. First, a burst of intense solar radiation zapped the airplane. It was just enough to corrupt the supercritical data that was being fed into the flight computer. With that garbage data coming in, the ELAC got confused, it malfunctioned, and it commanded that sudden, terrifying pitch down.
Now, here's where the story just explodes in scale. Because this wasn't some one-in-a-billion fluke that just happened to one unlucky flight. No, the discovery of what caused this sent shockwaves across the entire aviation industry.
And here's the kicker. The investigators realized this weakness wasn't unique to that single JetBlue plane. Oh no. This was a potential design flaw that affected the entire Airbus A320 family of jets. Only one of the most popular planes on the planet.
So how many planes are we talking about here? The number is it's hard to even wrap your head around. About 6,000. Let that sink in. 6,000 planes, carrying millions of passengers every single day, could all be vulnerable to this same kind of glitch from the sun.
And to put that into perspective for you, the A320 family makes up more than half of the entire global fleet of commercial airplanes. This one single problem had the power to absolutely cripple the world's air travel network. The risk to human life was just way, way too high to ignore.
So what do? Well, Airbus had no choice. They did something huge. They issued an immediate and mandatory global recall. The order was simple and non-negotiable. None of these A320s could fly again until they got a fix.
And that recall, it kicked off what's being called one of the biggest and most complex repair jobs in aviation history. It became a frantic, global race against time to get these thousands of planes safe and back in the air, a logistical nightmare of epic proportions.
So what was the fix exactly? Well, for most of the planes, it was an urgent software update, a patch designed to make the flight computers tougher, more resilient against this kind of data corruption. For some of the aircraft, a hardware update was also needed to properly shield the system.
You can just imagine the chaos, right? Airlines all over the world, big carriers like Indigo and Air India, had to start pulling their planes from service and getting their maintenance crews working around the clock. And of course, this caused massive, widespread delays and cancellations, messing up travel plans for millions of people.
But the good news is, this incredible effort actually paid off. By early December 2025, you can see here, the vast majority of that global fleet had been fixed and cleared to fly. At that point, there were fewer than 100 planes left in the whole world still waiting for the update.
So, with those patches rolling out at record speed, flights started getting back to normal. The immediate danger was over, all thanks to a pretty amazing, coordinated response from the entire global aviation industry.
But this whole thing leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? It's a huge wake-up call that our incredibly advanced technology can be knocked out by forces we don't even think about, like a random flare from the sun. So, as our world gets more and more complex, more interconnected, what other invisible threats are lurking out there? It's definitely something to think about.